Watching the streets of San Francisco from 1972 today feels like stepping into a living, breathing city that exists somewhere between memory and myth. And what continues to fascinate me most is not simply the procedural structure or the weekly mysteries, but the emotional architecture that holds the show together. An architecture built from patience, restraint, and the kind of character-driven storytelling that modern television often struggles to sustain for long stretches without spectacle. The first time I encountered the series, I expected a straightforward detective drama anchored in its era, something quaint and perhaps even predictable, but instead I found a narrative world that moves at the pace of human observation, allowing tension to build not through explosions or elaborate plot twists, but through glances, pauses, and the unspoken understanding between two men navigating a city that never truly settles. The relationship between the seasoned detective and his younger partner becomes the axis around which the entire show rotates, and it is within this dynamic that the theme I have come to think of as Hang Tough emerges most clearly, not as a slogan but as a lived philosophy, a method of endurance that manifests in quiet persistence rather than dramatic heroism. One of the earliest scenes that struck me deeply is the way the city itself is introduced not as a backdrop, but as an active participant in the narrative, with hills, fog, and waterfronts shaping the rhythm of the investigation, and the camera lingers just long enough on streets and buildings to give them personality, without turning them into mere postcards. The effect is that every case feels grounded in a physical environment that has memory and texture, and this grounding allows the emotional stakes to resonate more fully because the characters are never operating in a vacuum. I remember being particularly taken by a scene in which the younger detective pauses before entering a suspect's apartment, not out of fear, but out of recognition that once he crosses that threshold, he will carry whatever he finds with him long after the case is closed, and that moment of hesitation encapsulates the central tension of the series. The awareness that doing the right thing often requires absorbing the weight of other people's mistakes. The show excels at these small but revealing gestures, and in many ways it feels less like a crime drama and more like a meditation on responsibility, a portrait of how individuals maintain integrity in a profession that constantly tests it. The pacing of the episodes reinforces this tone, as scenes unfold with a deliberate rhythm that mirrors the process of real investigation, where breakthroughs are rare and most progress comes from steady, methodical work, and this emphasis on persistence aligns perfectly with the idea of hanging tough, of staying the course even when results are slow or incomplete. There is a sequence in one episode where the detectives revisit the same location multiple times, each visit revealing a new detail, and rather than feeling repetitive, the repetition underscores the necessity of patience, the understanding that truth often emerges incrementally rather than all at once. What makes this approach so compelling is the way it allows character development to occur organically, through shared experiences rather than overt exposition, and over time the bond between the two leads deepens in ways that feel earned rather than scripted. I find myself thinking about a particular exchange in which the older detective offers advice that is both practical and philosophical, reminding his partner that survival in their line of work depends less on bravado and more on endurance, and that sentiment resonates far beyond the confines of the show, touching on a universal truth about resilience in any demanding profession. The city of San Francisco, with its shifting light and unpredictable weather, becomes a metaphor for this resilience, a place that requires adaptability and awareness, and the cinematography captures this beautifully, using natural light and location shooting to create an atmosphere that feels authentic rather than stylized. One of my favorite sequences involves a late-night stakeout where very little happens on the surface, yet the scene is charged with tension because of the conversations that unfold inside the car, conversations that reveal the characters' fears, hopes, and doubts in subtle ways, and it is in these quiet moments that the show's emotional depth becomes most apparent. I recall watching that scene for the first time and realizing that the true drama lay not in the potential confrontation but in the waiting, in the shared understanding that the job requires them to remain vigilant even when nothing seems to be happening. This emphasis on waiting, on enduring, ties directly into the theme of hanging tough, and it is a theme that the series returns to repeatedly, sometimes explicitly but more often through implication. The cases themselves vary in complexity and tone, but what unites them is the sense that every investigation leaves a residue, something that lingers in the characters' minds and influences how they approach the next challenge. And this continuity gives the show a sense of realism that is both refreshing and poignant. I have often found myself comparing the series to other crime dramas from the same era and from later decades, and what stands out most is its refusal to rely on sensationalism, choosing instead to focus on the human cost of law enforcement, the emotional toll of confronting injustice day after day, without the guarantee of closure. There is a scene that has stayed with me in which the detectives visit a family affected by a crime, and the interaction is handled with such restraint and empathy that it feels almost documentary in its authenticity, and that authenticity is what allows the show to transcend its genre and become something more reflective and enduring. Watching it now, years after my first viewing, I find that it resonates differently, perhaps because I have a greater appreciation for the value of persistence and the quiet strength required to maintain one's principles over time, and the show serves as a reminder that toughness is not always loud or visible, that sometimes it is simply the act of continuing, of showing up, of doing the work even when the results are uncertain. The performances anchor this message, with both leads bringing a sense of lived experience to their roles, and their chemistry creates a believable partnership that evolves gradually, shaped by shared challenges and mutual respect. One of the most effective aspects of the series is its use of silence, the way it allows moments to breathe without filling every gap with dialogue or music, and in those silences we see the characters thinking, processing, enduring, and it is in those moments that the theme of hanging tough becomes most tangible. I remember a scene near the end of one episode where the detectives stand overlooking the city after a long day, neither speaking, simply taking in the view, and that image has lingered in my mind as a kind of visual summary of the series' ethos, the understanding that their work is ongoing, that each day brings new challenges, and that their role is to remain steady in the face of whatever comes next. The show's ability to balance procedural elements with character-driven storytelling is what gives it lasting appeal, and its exploration of resilience feels as relevant now as it did when it first aired, perhaps even more so in an era where instant results are often expected and patience is in short supply. Revisiting it has been a reminder of the power of understated storytelling, of the impact that can be achieved through careful pacing and thoughtful characterization, and it has reinforced my belief that the most compelling dramas are those that trust their audience to engage with nuance and ambiguity rather than relying on constant spectacle. Hang tough, as embodied by this series, becomes more than a thematic phrase. It becomes a guiding principle, a quiet call to endurance that echoes long after the credits roll, and as I reflect on the show's legacy, I am struck by how effectively it captures the essence of perseverance, not as a dramatic triumph, but as a daily commitment, a steady presence in a world that rarely offers easy answers. And in that sense, it remains not only a product of its time, but a timeless exploration of what it means to stand firm, to keep going, to hang tough in the face of uncertainty.